Old Testament, Genesis 13 through 15. Abraham and Lot separate. So Abraham went out from Egypt, he and his wife and all that he had, and Lot with him, into Negeb. Now Abraham was very rich in livestock, in silver, and in gold. He journeyed on by stages from Negeb as far as Bethel, to the place where his tent had been in the beginning, between Bethel and Ai, to the place where he had first made the altar, and there Abraham called on the name of the Lord. Now Lot, who went with Abraham, also had flocks and herds and tents, so that the land could not support them both living together, for their possessions were so great that they could not live together. And there was a strife between the herders of Abraham's livestock and the herders of Lot's livestock. At that time the Canaanites and the Perizzites lived in the land. Then Abraham said to Lot, "Let there be no strife between you and me, and between your herders and my herders, for we are kindred. Is not the whole land before you? Separate yourself from me. If you take the left land, then I will take the right, or if you take the right hand, I will go for the left." Lot looked at him and saw that the plain of the Jordan was well watered everywhere, like the garden of the Lord, and like the land of Egypt, in the direction of Zoar. This was before the Lord had destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah. So Lot chose for himself all the plain of Jordan, and Lot journeyed eastward. Thus they separated from each other. Abram settled in the land of Canaan, while Lot settled among the cities of the plain and moved his tent as far as Sodom. Now the people of Sodom were wicked, great sinners against the Lord. After Lot had separated from him, the Lord said to Abram, "Raise your eyes now, and now look at the place where you are, northward and southward and eastward and westward. For all the land that you see I will give to you and to your offspring forever. I will make your offspring like the dust of the earth, so that if you can count the dust of the earth, your offspring will also be counted. Rise up, walk through the length and breadth of the land, for I will give it to you." So Abraham moved his tents and settled by the oaks of Mamre, which are at Hebron, and there he built an altar to the Lord. Lot's captivity and rescue. In the days of King Amphel of Shinar, King Aruch of Elasar, King Chedorlaomer of Elam, and King Tidal of Goim, these kings made war with King Bera of Sodom, King Bersh of Gomorrah, King Shinab of Admah, King Shemamir of Zeboim, and the king of Bela. All these joined forces in the valley of Siddim, that is, the Dead Sea. 12 years they had served Chedorlaomer, but in the 13th year they rebelled. In the 14th year of his ruling, and the kings who were with him, and subdued Rephaim of Ashteroth Karnim, the Zuzim in Ham, the Amim in Shaveh Kiriatham, and the Horites in the hill country of Seir, as far as Il Paran, on the edges of the wilderness. Then they turned back and came to En Mishpat, and subdued all the country of the MacLeods, and also the Amorites who lived in Hazazon Tamar. Then the king of Sodom, the king of Gomorrah, the king of Admah, the king of Zeboim, and the king of Bela went out, and they joined the battle in the valley of Siddim with the king of Chedorlaomer of Elam, King Tidal of Goim, King Apharel of Shinar, King Aruch of Elasar, 4 kings against 5. Now the valley of Siddim was full of bitumen pits, and as the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, some fell into them, and the rest fled into the hill country. So the enemy took all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their provisions, and went their way. They also took Lot, the son of Abraham's brother, who lived in Sodom, along with his goods, and departed. Then one of the captives who escaped came and told Abram the Hebrew, who was living by the oaks of Mamre, the Amorite, brother of Eshcol and Anar. These were allies of Abram. When Abram heard that his nephew had been taken captive, he led forth his trained men, born in his house, 318 of them, and went in pursuit as far as dawn. He divided his forces against them by night, he and his servants, and routed them and pursued them to Hobah, north of Damascus. Then he brought back all the goods, and he also brought back his nephew Lot with his goods, and along with the women and people that were also captive. Abram blessed by Melchizedek. After his return from the defeat of Chedorlaomer and the kings who were with him, the king Sodom went out to meet him at the valley of Shaveh, and the king Melchizedek of Salem brought out bread and wine. He was priest of God Most High. He blessed him and said, "Blessed be Abram by God Most High, maker of heaven and earth, and blessed be God Most High, who has delivered your enemies onto your hand." And Abram gave him 1/10 of everything. The king of Sodom said to Abram, "Give me the people, but take the goods for yourself." But Abram said to the king of Sodom, "I have sworn to the Lord, God Most High, maker of heaven and earth, that I would not make a thread or a sandal thong or anything that is yours, so that you might not say, I have made Abram rich. I will take nothing but what the young men have eaten, and the share of the men who have went with me, Anar, Eshcol, and Mamre. Let them take their share. God's covenant with Abram. After all these things were said, the word of the Lord came to Abram in a vision. Do not be afraid, Abram, I am your shield. Your reward shall be very great. But Abram said, O Lord God, what will you give me? For I continue childless, and the heir of my house is Eliezer of Damascus. And Abram said, You have given me no offspring, and so the slave born in my house is to be heir. But the word of the Lord came to him and said, This man shall not be your heir, no one but your very own issue shall be your heir. He brought him outside and said, Look toward the heaven and count the stars, if you are even able to. Then he said to him, So shall your descendants be. And he believed the Lord, and the Lord reckoned it to him as righteousness. Then he said to him, I am the Lord who brought you from Ur of Chaldeans, to give you this land to possess. But he said, O Lord God, how am I supposed to know that I shall possess it? He said to him, Bring me a heifer 3 years old, a female goat 3 years old, a ram 3 years old, a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. He brought him all these and cut them in two, laying each half against each other. But he did not cut the birds in two. And when birds of prey came down on the carcasses, Abram drove them away. As the sun was going down, a deep sleep fell upon Abram, and a deep and terrifying darkness descended upon him. Then the Lord said to Abram, Know this for certain, that your offspring shall be aliens in a land that is not theirs, and they shall be slaves there, and they shall be oppressed for 400 years. But I will bring judgment on the nation that they serve, and afterwards they shall come out with great possessions. As for yourself, you shall go to your ancestors in peace. You shall be buried in a good old age, and they shall come back here in the 4th generation, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet complete. When the sun had gone down and it was dark, a smoking firepot and a flaming torch passed between these pieces. On that day the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, To your descendants I will give this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river of Euphrates, the land of the Canaanites, the Kizithites, the Kadmonites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Rephaim, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Gershurites, and the Jebusites. New Testament, Matthew 5, verse 1 through 26. The Beatitudes. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up to the mountains, and after he sat down, his disciples went to him. Then he began to speak and taught them, saying, Blessed are those poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people revile you and persecute you and utter all kinds of evil against you, falsely on my account. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward is great in heaven. For in the same way that they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Salt and light. You are the salt of the earth, but if salt has lost its taste, how can its saltiness be restored? It is no longer good for anything, but it is thrown out and trampled under the foot. You are the light of the world. A city built on a hill cannot be hid. No one after lighting a lamp puts it under a bushel basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, so that they may see your good works and give glory to your Father in heaven. The Law and the Prophets. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have come not to abolish, but to fulfill. For truly I tell you, until heaven and earth pass away, not one letter, not one stroke of a letter, will pass from the law until all is accomplished. Therefore, whoever breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does them and teaches them will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you, unless your righteousness exceeds that one of the scribes and Pharisees, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Concerning anger. You have heard that it was said before the ancient times, You shall not murder, and whoever murders shall be liable to judgment. But I say to you, that if you are angry with a brother or sister, you will be liable to judgment. And if you insult a brother or sister, you will be liable to counsel. And if you say, You fool, you will be liable to hell of fire. So when you are offering your gift at the altar, if you remember that your brother and sister has said something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled with your brother and sister, and then come out and offer your gift. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while on your way to court with him, or the accuser may hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the guard, and you will be thrown in prison. Truly I tell you, you will never get out until you have paid the last penny. Thank you for listening, God bless you, and if you want to continue, subscribe, and have a great day.